Does anybody need to mic up anything or do anything? Are we good? Good. Good morning, good afternoon. Thank you all for being here today on Martin Luther King Day. I appreciate you taking the time out of your schedules to be here to talk about what occurred last Thursday morning. I want to do three things today. I want to clear up the story that I gave you on Thursday morning. I want to introduce you to the suspect and the victim of the collision. And then I want to talk just a minute about the Good Samaritan that was there Thursday morning who performed some heroic acts. So the story is a little more clear today than it was on Thursday. The first call we received was at 4:21 in the morning from a gentleman who said that he was driving down I-10 westbound at around milepost 89, and there was a man in the roadway with a handgun, and he thought that he had fired at him. He heard a loud bang but didn't know if it had struck the vehicle, and then somewhere down the road his vehicle began to lose power and realized that the car had been shot. Subsequent to that, we started receiving calls from other passerbys of a guy in the roadway with a gun, a gentleman in the roadway moving a female body, dragging a body out of the roadway, that there was a rollover collision at 89, so we had a myriad of different calls for service at that location. The closest trooper to that area was performing a truck inspection. He was a commercial vehicle inspector, which you guys now know as Trooper Ed Anderson. And Ed stopped what he was doing and began to respond to that area. As he was responding, he was being followed by what we now know as our Good Samaritan. And the Good Samaritan says he was behind the red and blue lights of the trooper car as they traveled westbound on Interstate 10. And that distance was growing as they traveled down I-10. And once the Good Samaritan realized that he was beginning to close distance onto the trooper, he began to slow. And that will become important in a minute. When the trooper arrives, and I'll tell you now, we have yet to formally interview the trooper, as he has had a number of surgeries and has been under sedation and painkillers, so we are working on getting that interview complete. So some of this actually might change in the coming days, but it's pretty close to being accurate. He sees, when he arrives, a Hispanic male with a female in his arms in kind of a seated position along the right-hand shoulder of the roadway. So he's on what would be the north side of the roadway, adjacent to what we would call the slow lane of traffic as you travel down I-10. He blocks that lane of traffic with his trooper vehicle, gets out, puts out some flares to try to slow down vehicles that are responding or that are coming up to the scene. And as he is approaching this suspect, who's now down with an injured female, the Hispanic male says something to him in Spanish, which he doesn't understand or can't quite make out what he had said. And somewhere, as he's closing distance between the trooper vehicle and what he thinks is a moment here to provide first aid, the suspect pulls out a 9mm pistol and fires one time and strikes Trooper Anderson in the upper right shoulder, and that round ultimately exits his torso on the right side. It immediately incapacitates his arm. He says it goes limp or numb. I can't tell you what happens next. I just know that somewhere between where he was originally sitting with this critically injured female and the trooper vehicle, somewhere in that halfway distance point, there's a physical altercation that occurs. And now, as our Good Samaritan is now approaching the scene, he says, I've slowed to about 20 or 30 miles an hour. And as I pass, I see a Hispanic male straddling the trooper and taking big blows at him and trying to bang his head into the ground while striking him. So the Good Samaritan stops in front of the scene, comes back. He removes his 9mm handgun from his center console and walks back to the scene. His fiancée calls 911, and when he approaches within about 5 feet, he says, he starts telling the suspect to quit striking the trooper, to stop what he's doing. The suspect responds with profanity and then goes back to striking repeatedly this helpless trooper, which he is straddling on top of. Because of his position, he doesn't think he can fire without hitting the trooper, so he adjusts his position, and he delivers at least 2 bullet strikes to the suspect at that time, rendering the suspect incapacitated, albeit temporarily. And the Good Samaritan then begins to administer first aid to Trooper Anderson. Trooper Anderson had already called for medical assistance and for a medical helicopter when he arrived on scene and saw the serious injury female. As he's administering first aid, this Good Samaritan, to Trooper Anderson, the suspect gets up a second time and begins to attack them again. As the suspect approaches, the Good Samaritan fires another round, this time striking the suspect in the head, mortally wounding him and ending the fight. Another passerby stops to try to help out the first one. He uses the trooper's radio to put out a call for assistance, saying that there's an officer down and that they need a helicopter and other people to respond. So that's the story at the scene, the best we know it today. Second thing I want to do is tell you who was involved. The suspect we have now identified as Leonard Penuelas Escobar, age 37. He's a Mexican male. He is here in this country out of status. He is a known drug user but has no criminal history that we can find. We show that he attempted to cross the border on one occasion and was turned back. We also have information that leads us to believe that in 2007 he was actually a federal police officer for the Mexican police. The female victim is Vanessa Monique Lopez Reese. She's 23 years old. We believe that relationship is a romantic relationship between the two. They had lived together, but Escobar had been removed from the apartment complex they lived for allegedly doing drugs and selling drugs on the property. Lopez Reese has a criminal history in Phoenix. She had a number of warrants for her arrest at the time for misdemeanors and felonies, ranging from shoplifting to drug paraphernalia to possession of drugs. She is a native of Phoenix and born and raised in Phoenix, Arizona. And that's who they are. The third thing, the Good Samaritan. On Saturday afternoon, I was able to talk to him for the first time. I had called simply just to thank him from the agency and really from the state of Arizona, how appreciative we were that he was able to do what he did that day. And I can tell you this, if he didn't save Trooper Anderson's life, he definitely kept him from having much more severe neurological injuries from this beating that he was taking helplessly at the time. I have yet to meet him personally. I will tell you he's a very humble guy. He's a very spiritual guy, and he told me that he believes that God put him there that morning so he could save Trooper Anderson's life. He was on his way to California with his fiancée to participate in some events over this holiday weekend. I've never talked to anybody like him before in this circumstance. He knows that he did the right thing. He is trying to reconcile that in his mind. which is difficult to take a life even when you know it's the right thing to do. And I think as time goes by, he will eventually come forward and speak to you all. He knows that he'll be outed eventually anyway. I invited him here today to participate in this press conference, and he told me last night as we talked that he wasn't quite ready. And then finally, as I close, before I take a few questions, one of the things that keeps coming up is citizen involvement in police activity. And what does a citizen do when that happens? And here's what I would tell you on that. If you are going to attempt to help a police officer in any situation, communicate with them, let them know what you're attempting to do and who you are as you attempt to do it, and ask them if they need help. And if the officer is incapacitated and can't ask for help, I would say still communicate, because they may be able to hear you and know that you were there to be part of the solution and you are not another piece of the problem. But you're going to have to respond the way you see fit, but communication is the key to that. I'll take your questions.
Director, is there any connection at all between the Good Samaritan shooter and suspects?
No. The question is there a connection between the Good Samaritan and the suspect shooter? And the answer to that is no, there is no known connection.
What can you tell us about the Good Samaritan shooter's background? It sounds like he had had some kind of training.
He told investigators that he routinely trains with law enforcement and some military people that he knows. He tries to shoot and practice 3 or 4 times a year. So, but he has, to the best of my knowledge today, Donna, no military or law enforcement background. He is not part of that group.
Is there a motive established as to why he started to attack the officer, the trooper?
That is the big unknown, sir. That is the motive. We don't know why he decided to fire. The investigators are working from 2 directions. They start at the end and work back into time, and then they go forward to where they knew things had happened before and to work that direction as well, hoping to meet in the middle. But with both of the people from the collision, both having passed, there is no one to fill in that gap. And I will tell you, the investigators also let me know that the collision was a single vehicle collision that involved high speed, but they're still uncertain why it crashed, if he had overcorrected by traveling off of the road surface. But they found markings on the roadway to indicate that there was a lot of speed involved and it was a single vehicle rollover collision.
Has that suspect been identified as the driver, the one-on-one with the female passenger?
The question was, who was the driver, who was the passenger? We believe that the driver was Mr. Escobar. He had an abrasion on his shoulder which was consistent with a seatbelt, and her reason for death was severe blunt force trauma, being unrestrained and eventually ejected from the vehicle.
Was there anything found in the car that would give you any indication as to why this thing happened?
We will search the car later today or tomorrow. We are drawing search warrants on it as we speak, but we have not searched the vehicle.
Can you spell the names of the suspect and the woman in the vehicle, just to make sure we have that correctly?
Sure. Leonard Penuelas, Pennelas hyphen Escobar, Esocbar, and then Vanessa Monique, and that's Monique, Lopez, common spelling, hyphen Reese, Ruiz.
Pardon me, Director. That will be updated on azbps.gov.
As long with photographs, you'll get off the website as well.
And do you have an age on her?
She's 23.
Do you know where the suspect and the crash victim were headed?
No, sir. We make an educated guess. They had been staying in Salome, Arizona, since he had been evicted from the apartment complex, and we surmised that that may be where they were headed back to.
Sir, what have you been able to find out about the initial call? The gentleman said he thought he was shot at. Were you able to tie Escobar to that shooting?
Yes, they believe that The round that Escobar fired hit the vehicle and disabled the vehicle some ways down the road, but they do believe that that is completely related.
And he was firing as he was moving, please?
No, at this time the collision had already occurred and he was standing in the roadway. So that first shot, for whatever reason, he's firing at moving cars on I-10. Again, we don't know the reason. We surmise a couple of things, but don't really know. I'm sorry, I can't hear you. I apologize. Yes, ma'am. Correct. Escobar was the driver of the rollover vehicle. That was the question.
This may sound like a crazy connection, but you got a guy sitting on the side of the road shooting at vehicles. Will you look at those ballistics for the freeway shootings we had last year, for the ones that are unsolved still?
I'm going to go with you. That's a crazy question. The question was, is this somehow related to the freeway shooter? And there's no reason to believe that is true.
Chief, do you know how long Escobar had been in the country illegally?
We know that he'd been living in Glendale for about the last year and a half. We do not know when he entered the country.
And to the best of your knowledge, never been deported?
I don't know if I know that, if he had been deported or not. I know that he had been turned back but not deported. I don't have that answer, sir.
I'm sorry, just like your thoughts on that's an awfully strange reaction. You're in an accident and you're shooting people. What do you make of it?
I don't know why. Again, I come up with what would make somebody flip out, and I'm going to guess that he was impaired. They were both known meth users. You can surmise that maybe there were hallucinations. You can surmise that he was frustrated, that his girlfriend was mortally injured in this collision, and people wouldn't stop. There's a lot of things you can jump to, but we don't know the answer.
How is Trooper Anderson doing? Is he still in hospital?
Trooper Anderson has been released. He will recover. To what extent completely, we don't know. But we're, again, very thankful for the citizen intervention. We're thankful that no matter how far he recovers with the use of his arm, that he's here to be with his family, and our thoughts and prayers go to them. I'm going to wrap it up, but thank you again for being here. If we need to do further down the road, we will, and Raul will be available if you guys have further questions. Thanks for your attendance. Thanks, Donna. Good to see you.